Thanks, Sean, for inviting me. I'll speak quickly about my forthcoming book entitled Albert Kahn, Inc., Architecture, Labor, and Industry, 1905 to 1961. Copy edits on the manuscript came back to me last week. So I have my work cut out for me, and it's a great time to be thinking about the book. Here's the chapter organization. I hope you can read it. The introduction precedes the first body chapter that introduces the work of the Kahns, a whole family dedicated to the industrialization of Detroit and beyond. The second chapter provides a kind of establishing shot for industrial architecture as it developed at the beginning of the century, and 3 chapters follow in succession, one on design, one on construction, and one on building use. The conclusion wraps up the book's arguments, and the back matter presents some of the copious archival material from which it was written. I'll quickly go through the chapters in sequence to give an overview of the work. The preface provides background, dwelling on this iconic image of quote, seamless steel tubes, sick, in Dearborn, as published by the German modernist critic Adolf Behne in 1926, and an establishing shot for me and the book. I had it rephotographed the building rephotographed in 2023, as it is found today, sheathed in enameled corrugated metal, yet preserving its butterfly profile like the caricature or cartoon of a daylight building. The introduction presents the book's arguments and methods. For the first, it is simply the claim that we should study industrial architecture for its many ingenious aspects as architecture, but that historians also have much to learn from the history of labor that coincides here with the history of its housing in certain kinds of buildings. In this particular case, the history of the built environment was also caught up with a destruction that may be unique in human history, at least until recently. The introduction precedes the 2 chapters that lay foundations for the argument that follows, and 3 chapters that build the book on top of those foundations. The introduction also reflects on the span of the architect's career, beginning in the historical revival movements of the late 19th century, ending during one of the largest military buildups ever, one that resulted in wholesale destruction of built environments all across Europe and Asia. Here, a church that Albert Kahn sketched in the 1890s on the left, and as it was found after the war on the right. The first base chapter documents the family itself, one united by an unusually strong set of professional ties in professions orbiting around the built environment. 4 siblings became well-respected engineers, and 3 worked for Albert Kahn, Inc. in Detroit. The other one built the Hoover Dam. One founded a reprographics company that another sibling founded a reprographics company that provided blueprints for the firm, no small thing. One went into the plumbing business, where he often worked for his brother. Only one sister, Paula, escaped from the family activity by marrying and moving to New York. Even the father was part of the family businesses. This chapter describes the importance of networks of trust that supported the siblings throughout their professional lives and strengthened their business endeavors for many years. Chapter 2, Industrial Architecture Situated in the 20th Century, zooms out to consider questions that arose around industrial architecture at this time. The chapter provides an overview of industrial building prior to the big projects of early 20th century Detroit, in which Kahn was closely involved. Instead, the chapter looks across the depth and breadth of building since the Industrial Revolution and simply describes it historically. Chapter 3, its subtitle taken from a passage from Marx, focuses on questions of design, arguing that industrial building was a major subject of design innovation and investigation in the early part of the 20th century, culminating in the amazing Daylight Factory, complexes like Highland Park and the Hudson Motor Company, and the development of an industrial architecture curriculum at a major architecture school in Kahn's name, that is to say, at the University of Pennsylvania. The Kahns were at the forefront of this movement, with Moritz Kahn's landmark design and construction of industrial buildings, laying a different set of principles down for the design professions, and a library of outstanding architectural books on industrial and other kinds of construction around the world. Chapter 4 deals with the mechanics of construction, as attested by a remarkable archive of construction photography that numbers around 85,000 photographs in the years between 1906 and 1945. This chapter deals with scientific management of the building site, noting how carefully timed and sequenced photographs replaced site supervisors with photographers, thereby trimming costs from construction administration, part of an overall cost-cutting optimization project that made the firm as successful as it was. Chapter 5 considers the inhabitation of buildings after completion, recreating the experience of workers in Detroit's major manufacturing facilities, especially the tactical way that Henry Ford dealt with questions of race, ethnicity, and ability. The first to hire African Americans, Ford also relegated them to the worst jobs, where they worked side by side with another group that was routinely discriminated against, i.e. Polish immigrant workers. This chapter reflects on the experience of thousands of people in the buildings of industry, asking why this aspect of building use has seldom been investigated by architectural historians, and concluding that the huge employment boom associated with industry was part and parcel of the construction of American empire throughout the world. The military-industrial complex, in other words, was built by all Americans. The conclusion describes how industrial buildings allow us to better understand architecture overall. The claim of the book is that studying architecture by means of the exceptional, the architecture of elites, disguises the work of buildings in the world and dissociates architectural history from the crucial economic history that nonetheless inhabits it. Thank you.